So many new skills, things we learned.
We're good. Maybe.
Excellent. Well, since we don't have a quorum, we're not officially going to call anything to order and approve anything. So we can get right into our business at hand. You had the agenda, up, didn't you?
I did have the agenda up. If you want to be able to see people.
Nancy's always prepared. So I guess we're going to talk new business about the public library expansion. And I'm going to, if Jamie's okay, I'm going to turn it over to Nancy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super, thank you. We are very excited about the design project, and online we have Austin sit. I guess I'll take my mask off so you can hear better. Austin and Ian from our team. The library is very interested in being representative of all sustainability models. And anything that we can do to reinforce what you're doing, the committee, and represent the community appropriately for a model facility. That's really what we're after. For those of you who haven't followed our modeling, so far we have an electric vehicle charging station in the parking lot. That was the first public library charging station in the state. We managed to do that with private donations. It was simultaneous to our adding solar panels, which, thank you, Dad, really was the next big step for us. About 25% of our electricity is covered by the solar panels right now. The sustainability message started way back when we built this building. Our lawns have never been treated with pesticides. We try to provide programming and collaborative activities for the town's committees in any way we can. So anything that we can do as a public facility to model appropriate behavior or forward thinking. We've got the kilowatt meters. That was a landmark program that we also initiated in the state of Maine. People can check those out and test their power usage in their homes. You can check it out just like a book. So those are the sorts of things we've done in the past. We think it's important. We believe in it. So we want to be on the same page as you folks, but also see if there's anything that you can bring to us. I will say that Austin and Ian are, Austin, you're a lead person, right? You've got all sorts of initiatives.
Yes.
Environmental stewardship. We also want to do things like bird safe glass. We understand that that's a big ticket item, but we'd like to extend it to that as well. The cords that you see outside our windows right now are paracord curtains that keep the birds from striking the glass. So we come up with innovative solutions as well. So Austin, is there anything that you'd like to pitch in on this one?
No, thank you very much, Nancy. You know, I would say, just to sort of reiterate what you said, it's great to have the starting point to have a very informed and committed client. You understand these issues and you understand the benefit of these issues. So, and you know, I want to applaud you for all the measures you've taken in the past. This is sort of a unique approach. Ian and I have done many high performance buildings with a great deal of commitment to sustainability and high performance. But this is rather unique because it's an existing building and a new addition. And it's easy to address, high performance envelope with the new construction, but it's really difficult and very expensive to retrofit the existing. And I think we sort of struck a good balance between the two. The new will be performed, very high level of insulation, a slab R value of 20, walls of R40, and ceilings of R60. So that's easy to do. And we are also replacing the windows in the existing construction. So again, we sort of struck a really good balance between the old and the new. One thing we didn't do, and it would be interesting to get the thoughts of the committee on this. We have not discussed certification, and that is a big discussion. Do we have LEED certification on this, or are there certification targets that might be appropriate for this building? And fundamentally, it comes down to that in some cases, there are costs associated with that certification. You know, it can be over $100,000 for paperwork and so forth. But it would be good to get the thoughts of this committee on the certification process, if there's a benefit to it, if that's an expectation or what. Ian, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, just that, as you said, the new addition is, you know, the mechanical systems are highly efficient, you know, with energy recovery, variable refrigerant flow, HVAC systems. These are the types of systems that we would use if this was to be a passive house building, which is really the kind of the gold standard for energy efficiency. And so we have very efficient systems designed into this, and that's what's been budgeted so far, right, Austin? And that's what's
Yes.
in the cost estimate, the current cost estimate.
Which is actually almost 2/3 of the building. But again, it's really difficult to address that original 12,000 square feet, you know, to address this below slab insulation, to address the walls and so forth. It can be done, but it's very expensive.
Yeah, and the other thing that was discussed, but it's not in the budget right now, is tearing out the existing HVAC system in the old section and replacing it with a new, more efficient system. So that's something that could be discussed.
So we're gonna have repair work done for the meeting room system.
I think we're having issues with the owl. It's just randomly shut off. Okay, maybe we're back. I don't know why we
I don't
don't
see
have,
the light on.
Yeah.
oh, I don't know why we don't have video. Oh, you know what? It's because y'all can't see what's happening on my screen over here. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can figure this out.
I can see the
What is
floor
happening
plan now.
behind the curtain?
Yeah, right. All right. So we're sharing a screen, which you can't see because I had it on my screen. So there we go.
I would just toss in a couple of comments on certification. This committee's discussed that in a couple of other contexts. And in those contexts, I find that I'm not that worked up about it. Like, I like the underlying pieces, but the thought of
The bill too, but not necessarily
$100,000
the expense of
to get the
obtaining.
plaque.
Right.
Yes.
Having said that, in a public building, the plaque has value, but I wonder if you could almost get more value by putting up a plaque that listed all of the underlying.
The educational plaque and
decisions
not the bragging
rather than
plaque.
the certification plaque.
Yeah.
I'm kind of mixed in a public building. Like, that's the one place where I would almost want to have the sign that says what the certification level is.
Yeah.
I think you could definitely acknowledge it was built to that, but what really made it be built to that, I think is more important for the public to know.
Yeah.
Not that, you know, an informed public also realizes that there have been issues with these certifications.
Right, that you can game it and get points for. putting-
Exactly, and so building two, I think, is much more important than bragging about that we did. But what got us to build two? I think that's the most important message you want.
Yeah. When you're
I
talking
really-
about $100,000 worth of paperwork, I'd
Right.
much rather see that go
Yeah.
into the building.
And it would be
itself.
nice. Passive house is starting to become very popular out there, but it is a very big barrier in, you know, if you just did it to the standards, it would be one thing, but trying to prove everything, because I think passive house is trying to avoid the negative connotations that have been brought up with the LEED buildings.
I do like the suggestion to have educational information available about these systems. I think, you know, Nancy has done such a good job of promoting the efforts that she's done to date. And, you know, if we can, you know, outline exactly why we've done this and what the issue has been and why we've done this, it will educate the patrons, and that will be a huge benefit.
Well, we're right there. I have to admit, I haven't read the town paper in a couple weeks. But ensuring that the public has this information in advance of the vote, and estimates of energy savings in advance of the vote. Because, I mean, certainly my houses, these can pay for themselves. And when people understand that they pay for themselves, they're not as worked up about paying for them.
Yeah, I just think about the lessons learned from the public safety building, where they initially went for a very high energy efficient building. And I think that got scaled back quite a bit through value engineering. And so recognizing that cost more upfront, but the payback is worth it in the long run. And making sure that people understand that, especially as you get towards the end of the project and you're trying to cut wherever you can. I think that was an unfortunate circumstance with the public safety building, that some of the energy efficient systems were removed from that.
It's very important to have the right mix of committee members too, because that was part and parcel to value engineering. So regardless of what happened there, we've learned, and I don't want to go around saying I told you so. But
I like the fact that, again, we've reached this place of balance. Oftentimes, these efforts, as you probably know, can have a lot of bells and whistles and can be incredibly sophisticated. And we have a system that is appropriate level of technology that can be easy to run. It has the benefit of long-term savings and reducing the carbon footprint of the facility, but it's not computer driven with a lot of intricate controls and so forth, because sometimes that can be so complex that you lose the benefit of them. They have to be operator friendly, so that Nancy and her staff can operate this building in the most efficient way possible.
it's like insulation. The more insulation you put in doesn't necessarily equate to the same amount of savings.
Right.
It's diminishing returns on your investment. And going too fancy is not always the best solution.
Or also go in the opposite
They say,
direction.
Do the KISS method. To share what Deb's thoughts are on that, and I think I've already voiced that, but I'd like to also address the existing building and the value. Again, I think that's where the diminishing returns, if you were to worry less about the envelope and more about the mechanical systems, you're going to find you get more savings out of that for the cost effectiveness of the envelope improvements. Now, windows, you do those for a variety of reasons, but to dig in and try to put insulation and bring up the slab and all that, it is diminishing returns. You're much better off sizing your HVAC load to the entire building and upgrade that versus the money spent on envelope improvements.
And in terms of the existing building, I'm just curious, what do you have for lighting in here? Is this
This is
LED or?
Not yet. This is still the last round of the efficiency main upgrades to fluorescent. So we've got 5 and 8s and I don't know what else, but high efficiency fluorescent, but not
You went efficient
at that point.
at that point, but
Right.
the transformation of the market has.
And the irony is that we're just losing all of our ballasts. I mean, we're generationally at the need for the next phase, and we've just got lights out all over the place because we don't want to replace more fluorescents, but we're finding secondhand stuff.
I recommend you move forward as soon with that because
18 months.
lighting is going to go away at some juncture if you were looking for
It already
financial assistance
Oh,
because
well, that-
the market's transformed
absolutely.
and the opportunities aren't there. The growth of what you're going to see is electrification. And that's something that we really certainly need to address with this project is electrify everything. And then whether you're attached to the grid, you try to work on your RPS, your renewable portfolio, and you put solar. And so you begin to generate and become this carbon neutral sort of aspect. I don't know what your roof line will look like in the square footage and how much KV or KW you could actually install to support all of that. Will you need to be tethered to, the mothership, so to speak? Um,
Always.
We'll send it to
Each other.
But someday, you know, that may change as the grid becomes cleaner. You're really doing the right thing by using more of what's clean on the grid. And even natural gas is a fossil fuel that is not carbon friendly, regardless of how efficient it is. And so the shift to doing electrification is becoming more of the emphasis, and that carbon reduction has a value to it.
So we are projecting natural gas, is that right?
Not with a VRF, you're not.
Oh, okay,
Well,
whatever.
the existing building has natural gas.
But
But
Ian,
that
that could
says
be
you have to
converted
use
in the
it.
future, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's what we were wrestling with is to, you know, trying to get this thing approved by the voters. And there's some value and some age left in the existing HVAC. I mean, when that gets replaced, whether it's part of this project or 5 or 10 years down the road, it should definitely be, you know, electric VRF or with energy recovery.
That's the beauty of the VRF. You can actually add to it as time goes on. Should you want to, should the life of your existing system exceed its useful life, you can just add another outside unit and interior units and you know, stay on the same VRF system.
Right, we're-
I was just gonna ask you.
Variable refrigerant flow, he
Thank you.
indicated that. It's
Yeah,
also,
Efficiency Maine offers a rebate for it. I mean, we're talking about soft costs for certification. Right now, it's over $3 a square foot if we use VRF. So we're getting paid for energy efficient measures versus paying for them. So it's a pretty nice
I look at it as
bonus.
efficiency main is buying your energy savings so that we're helping the state.
Is the committee aware of any other measures that might help contribute to the sustainability efforts? Are there any other programs out there that we should investigate and take advantage of?
In a commercial building, well, what do you have for water heating?
Little tiny tanks, 2 of them.
Yeah, little electric
Well, then maybe the
units.
design of your facility may want to include a way to use heat pump water heating solutions. That's the part 2. I mean, a commercial building has 3 basic systems, right? Water heating, HVAC, and lighting. And if you go to LED, you're good on lighting. In my opinion, if you go electrification on your HVAC, you're doing the right thing. And if you can do the heat pump technology with your water heating solutions, that's the final piece.
And so I think my only question on HVAC and then maybe hot water as well for the existing part of the building is what are the incremental costs for including that in the new system versus replacing things later? Like sometimes it's not
Economy
that
of
much
scale.
more to upsize the thing you're putting
Yeah.
in and then do that in the replacement as opposed to being prepared to.
Yeah, that, to me, that's another advantage of going with the VRF systems is, you know, you're putting in these branch boxes to go to a already built shell. You're just maybe adding some branch boxes and lines and you put in, you know, your indoor units. Really effective.
Austin, I wonder if we could bid the job with the base bid as is, and then have an alternate price to replace the HVAC. And what I was thinking, there's an existing roof, you know, air system in that building. The thought would be to reuse that ductwork for ventilation only. We'll put replace the heating and cooling unit with an energy recovery unit, and then add the VRF.
Yeah. If you
So, yeah.
These are not going to give you the amount of outside air that you need, your makeup air. The new rooftop units that employ both heat pump for a heating exchanger and a cooling are now available. And I hear Efficiency Maine is like weeks away from adding that to their portfolio. So they now have the heat, the air conditioning, and now it's got the V in the HVAC.
Yeah.
And that's critical piece of the whole electrification is how do you deal with makeup air? ERVs is a great solution, but it's not always it's not the only solution when you look at the amount of makeup air you have to bring in. And the colder climate that Maine has, sometimes the rooftop units are needed, but you usually have to have a fossil fuel or some sort of combustion for the heat exchanger. And that's market is changing. And now there's very efficient heat pump heaters, or you can actually take the existing one and put a VRF in and link it with a third-party ventilator. So you have that flexibility.
But Ian, I really like that suggestion. Back to that original point, we determined that those rooftop units currently have 10 to 15 years of life left in them. But this would give us the option. And, in our cost estimating, as we outlined to the town council, we were conservative at each and every juncture. We had a generous amount for inflation. We have an owner's contingency. And should we have favorable bidding, we could possibly replace those rooftop units well within our budget. And that's a good approach.
Those are my thoughts.
I did want to point out one other element. This is our structural plan. And so for the new addition, this is basically all wood frame construction. It's a very affordable technology. It's platform framed for the new addition. And in the connector, which is the major atrium, we are going to use a limited amount of mass timber construction. So those would be glulam beams and possibly CLT planks. But, again, it's embodied carbon, and it's also an affordable, easy, and accessible technology for a lot of different contractors.
And it brings some of the main, forest
Products.
into
Yes.
the mix. Yeah. If anybody has an opportunity to go see the timber framed building in the rock that's gone up, it's quite a neat building.
Where is that? I'm sorry.
Outside.
It's that, I can't remember the company, but it's that new big building. It's all timber framed
Ooh.
at the Rock in Westbrook.
Oh, right.
Of Rock Row.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know the one I'm referring to, but I just
Okay.
can't remember the company that put it in. Or
And
that
then-
used it, but it's
The-
Main Products.
Also the new USM Student Success Center has mass timber construction. So we're big proponents of that. And our structural engineers, Thornton Tomasetti, are like thought leaders in the use of mass timber.
Yeah, they drank the Kool-Aid and they continue to drink it by the gallon. That's top notch.
Well, I would commend you for your choice of architect and engineer. I think that was my very first suggestion when we were starting about this. Like, the most important thing is to ensure that the architects and engineers you're working with are already thinking in this way. You don't want to be training your architects and engineers. You don't want to be asking them to push things forward. You want people that are already familiar with working in this space so that they're bringing ideas to you rather than the other way around. So
Yeah.
nice work.
And we used to think that, and I'm sure back in a few years ago, water source heat pumps were really, they are truly more efficient than an air source heat pump. But now you have to think about the heat sink. Where does that come from? Well, geothermal, it comes from the ground, right? So to pull it out, you need to drill wells, you need motors to draw it out and circulate it. So you have a cost there. And then if you want, with the air source heat pumps, you don't need that, but you give up a little bit of the inherent heat sink value of having a constant heat sink. But typical what we see with water source heat pumps is a boiler to bring the water temperature up to make the heat pump water heater work well. And then you have a chiller that does the chill water to make that effective. So geothermal, while it used to be the buzz, and of course LEED was very big on geothermal, we've determined, well, I shouldn't say we, it's been determined that it's not as cost effective as the electric solution like a VRF. And to shift the minds of the architects and design engineers, that's a big barrier because there's a lot of thoughts that are still there.
No,
But
we,
I'm glad to see
we've,
that that's not our thought here.
yeah,
with
we've
this
seen,
project.
that, geothermal is more efficient, but it's a better investment to do VRF air source heat pumps and maybe buy a little more solar.
Mhm.
That's a better formula.
That's because heat pumps have changed, air source heat pumps. They now work at -15, -22 degrees. We're seeing them put out at full capability. Below that, you start to get a decay in capability, but they still have a COP of greater than 1. So you're always going to win.
That's been a game changer for this market for sure.
Well, it's amazing
nice
to see the number
I
of
agree
people.
with Deb. It's nice to see that you're bringing forth a project to voters that's responsible for their community, to their community. And I think you really need to press upon the point of, the built environment and the value that you're going to put into this means something. It means that those people that have beachfront property might not have to put it on stilts. It does mean a cost savings if you look at it from a bigger perspective. Anything else on this topic?
Well, I had a question about LED lights. There was a recent story on NPR about some of the negative effects of LED on psychologically that
Oh,
the-
Zirconian, that fancy
Rhythms,
buzzword,
yeah.
I can't even spell it.
yeah.
I haven't done
Too much
research
blue
on that.
lights, no.
Well, again, yeah, color rendition is a big deal, color temperature. You get up beyond 3000 Kelvin, you then start to shift that color of light, and that could have an impact. But these lights, there's a color temperature for LED that you won't even see the difference.
So that
Initially, you say, wow, this is bigger and better. But not necessarily, because these things decay. Tubes decay at a rapid rate versus an LED doesn't decay quite as quickly.
so it's still a design decision.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
a
Yeah.
consideration.
And if you wanted to put it on controls and have dimmability and daylight harvesting and those kind of things, and time of use kind of thing, those are easy computer stuff. That's not difficult to operate, nor does it break down.
Yeah.
So,
I would sort of second that. The color temperature of LED lights is really critical. You don't want them to be that sterile blue light. Most clients prefer a warmer light, and there is a technology to shift the color temperature throughout the day. But again, that's another level of controls and complexity that might not be appropriate here.
right.
It's
I
just
mean-
that their staff is exposed to it all day long, long-term.
Yeah, you're gonna
exposure
get
to
these
things.
kind of same lights, so
Yeah.
you can get them. And
I
you're not
will
having issues.
I will say, I don't even think you can buy a non-LED light anymore. I mean, that's speaking of changing technology, we haven't used anything but LED for years now. It's become standard. It used to be this expensive option, but now it's the standard technology.
Are there multiple types of LED? Some that have more, a spectrum that's more like the natural light, more yellow, and
Hmm.
others that are just, too so blue that it actually, can cause.
Yeah, it's
some
a lot to do
negative.
with the driver the voltage you apply to the driver, which is the little thing that replaces the ballast that were in fluorescent lights. They're like this big now. The other ones were like this.
So it's not necessarily the variable light changing capabilities that we were talking about that might be very expensive, but it's just a choice of what kind of LED you buy.
I
Well,
will
yeah,
add that,
because they come out of the package at certain temperatures.
I
In
will add
Scarborough,
that-
we're trying to keep even outside lighting at 3,000 K.
Mhm.
Now, there's 4,000 K in some of the streetlights because of traffic and the need for more light. But certainly you'll notice that a lot of parking lot lights and everything still have that kind of a yellowish glow, the 3,000 K, because it's softer. And, but it delivers lumens just as effective as a 4,000 K. Just that color just changes a little bit.
And I think that's a good point, just to monitor what lights are going in that people will be exposed to for long hours. Sure.
I have learned that LED lights do burn out. You know, they can have a very long life, but we've had clients who've had their lights on 24 hours a day. And it's really important to get fixtures where you can change the LED component without having to change the whole fixture.
We've already run into that in our parking lot. Our parking lot was the first, well, we claim this route. The first LED retrofit for a parking lot in the state, thanks to efficiency main support. So we had engineers from all over the state coming to look at our parking lot, but our lights are starting to burn out.
They'll last longer if you turn them off.
I know, it's all about that timer. And it's too complicated to use. So there, that's exactly the point. If it's too complicated to use, it's not helpful.
Yes.
Well, light sensors make a world of difference and there's no need for anybody to do anything, so.
Yeah.
Anything else on the library topic?
We really appreciate you meeting with us. It means a lot.
Well, good luck. I think if you try to demonstrate the added value, there's always going to be those that don't care about that
Mhm.
and say, well, that hits my wallet and my wallet's more important than the other things. But
Mm.
those that through education that can come to light, look, we can even train engineers to be different than they were. And if we can do that, if the market can do that, then we should be able to demonstrate and start to sway
Well,
other
I think
people.
the message really is that these are decisions that help the bottom line over a
Right,
block of time.
Right,
And
that's,
so making sure that we're doing our cost estimates over time rather than upfront.
the first conversation out of everybody is the added debt.
Mhm.
And that is not what you should be talking about. What's the long-term debt
Yeah.
that is incurred, not short-term?
One of the things we haven't touched on, we talked about the building and the envelope, but we also have plans for the habitat
Yeah, the
around the
grounds.
building as well.
Yeah.
So we're very interested in keeping natural habitat and creating outside programming space and.
Maybe the
add
conservation
another-
committee could weigh in on that.
Mhm.
I don't have that expertise. I don't know, there's probably somebody on our committee that's not here that has a lot more than what I can speak to. But I think, using native plants and that kind of stuff is just the smart thing to do. You don't need to bring in something that's from the tropics because it looks beautiful. It doesn't work here.
Amen. Amen.
Maintenance is a huge issue, so
Yeah.
the more native we can stay, the better. It just is,
Yeah.
as you say, Rick, it is.
And the comment earlier, I think Deb made about knowledge transfer, whatever you learn about the sustainability aspects of this design and everything, that you share that knowledge with the community.
Mhm.
And I think, landscaping is something a lot of people can learn from, native plants and what works and what doesn't work and how to change the outside environment
Exactly.
to something that's more sustainable.
And one of our roles is to be a community space for that as well. And so the more people we can bring in to participate in that, the community organizations that help, the donations that come in from people who care, those sorts of things are driving the support from the community as well.
There's something called the Sustainability Library Initiative. Heard about that?
I have.
Yes, the
I'm on.
Curtis Library in Brunswick is going through the process.
Right.
It's amazing how all these things, there's also interfaith sustainability for church or places of worship. There's schools, the high performance collaboration that has built standards. So there's all these groups that have kind of formed together to really help the built environment. And, staying involved in what is in your niche is something that is helpful because it keeps you in the know. You know, someday what I hear is that paint will be illuminated and that will become like from a DC charge. Now, how that's gonna work is gonna be amazing, but there's gonna be something beyond LEDs, but I may never see it, but
We just need to do what the best choices are today.
Today.
Not worry about what might or might not happen in the future. It was okay to put in these light bulbs because you were making a decision at that time.
Exactly.
Long time ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it wasn't that long ago.
What is the plans for pulling together a building committee?
We'll have to hit the ground the week after November
Yeah.
or whatever
Yes.
date.
Yeah.
We have a lot of work to do once the referendum passes. And if you've read the memorandum of understanding, that's really spelled out is the building committee. And it's going to have town officials and experts in the field. And so it will be very comprehensive. But we should have a sustainability person on
Well,
that.
and to Rick's point, when value engineering becomes
Yes.
front of conversation, you have to
Yeah.
have strong voices on there
Mhm.
Interesting. I
are
Listen to that.
uncompromising when
Yeah.
it comes to making sure that people are educated about the value of sustainability and the systems that are being proposed, because we've seen those things value engineered out of other buildings before, and so we have to have a good, strong advocate.
I love the idea of going to bid though with two different proposals, one as built and one that might improve some of the HVAC units in the existing building. And see what the differential is and see what the differential is over time. So there's a lot of consideration, but April, as you very well know, we want to be really responsible to the taxpayer as well. So that's a very, very large consideration. So we have to weigh a lot of different factors for a lot of different citizens. So,
And so I guess just focusing on that as a bottom line financial issue, I mean, people who've heard me talk about these sustainability issues know that I almost never talk about the carbon benefits, because my experience is that the people who are inclined to hear that information will hear it already, will hear it while I'm talking about the finances. And so I choose only to talk about the finances and totally ignore the carbon benefits, because there's a group of people that will shut off entirely as soon as I say that word. So just your mileage may vary, and there are other reasons to educate people about carbon load and stuff.
But beyond that, you have to get to the voters that have the question, do we need a bigger library? That's, to me, secondary to the building is getting to the voters that say, why do we need a bigger library? Why is this even coming before us?
Yeah.
That's the big, to me, what I hear out there is that's the bigger question. Do we need it?
That's, the Sustainability Library Initiative has three aspects to it. Environmentally, good decisions is one of them. Then there's social equity, and the third is financial feasibility or economic feasibility. And I may be the oldest person here, and on a fixed income, and my property tax bill is a significant part of my income. And to the point where, these decisions are, about referendums and taking out loans that have, long-term impacts on our ability to pay our property tax it's a big issue. Will we be priced out of Scarborough? We have to sell our house because we can't afford to live in Scarborough. I mean, it's getting to that point,
Social equity is becoming the big buzz. Everything we look at now is with that in a lens as well, in the diversification of Maine is changing, and social equity needs to be part of that conversation. Just an FYI, that's becoming quite the buzzword.
old people are it's a group of our
Well, I
society
think,
that
I think
should
you're
be- should be-
absolutely right because of the demographics of Maine.
Yep.
And are we pricing folks out of their homes? So we have to think, and then what can the value of the library do for somebody that's on a fixed income?
Well, I think you also have to think about the fact is you need really healthy public places like town halls and libraries and those kind and schools to maintain good property values for your constituents too. So that's another consideration. If we have schools and libraries that are falling down, our property values are not going to maintain a good value. So that's another consideration too, that it's all part of a healthy.
There's an argument to be said that the better our buildings are, the more people that want to live here, and then that plays
That's
against
That's
in
right.
in some cases. So you gotta figure a way to balance it all. and I
The
don't
other
have an
thing
answer.
is we have a unique opportunity too. We have a really solid fundraising aspect for our expansion. And we could potentially tap into some of that for some of these efficiencies that we could potentially have in the new building. Now, HVAC system is not very attractive, but additional solar panels might be, or more charging stations. So that's another opportunity that we have sort of uniquely.
Well, we wish you good luck, and I hope someday we'll be talking with you again because we want to make sure it doesn't get valued engineered out.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you both on the phone there.
thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your commitment to the community and to the sustainability. It was really great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
So we now have a quorum because Tom has
Yeah, I saw
joined
that.
I
us.
saw Tom. I was just gonna say, we have a quorum now, so we could vote on the minutes.
Yep.
And I know you sent them out.
Yep.
Good morning, Tom. He's muted, but.
Yes, hello, I'm taking care of this child, but yes, I'm here.
Well, priorities are priorities. But we do now open the session with a quorum, so we'll call the meeting to order at this point and offer a suggestion or an offer for a motion to accept the minutes from our last meeting. We have a movement. I'll second it.
All right, I'll do roll call.
Excellent.
We'll start with Tom just disappeared. Tom, do you approve the minutes?
I do, yes.
Thank you. Deb,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Ernie,
Yes.
thank you.
All right. Etched in the historical files. Not hysterical files.
I know, they're not that funny. I'm sorry. I'll try to do better.
All right, Jamie, what's next?
Just an update on the joint memo with Conservation Commission to the town council. So just for a brief overview, Randy Hogan, the chair, sent that to the council in early September and did get responses back. April, you responded all. Randy got responses back from Don Hamill and John Anderson saying that the information was helpful. There have been some new developments in that process, so I don't know if April, you want to speak to that?
Lordy Lou, you guys. So the process has taken a different turn. It's now been proposed to the council at first reading that we amend the GMO rather than entertain the existing exemption requests. That vote only requires a simple majority. It did pass 4-3 at our last meeting, and we have a workshop tonight to discuss using this as a path forward as opposed to entertaining the current exemption requests. As you guys know, the exemption requests are tied to public benefit, whereas a GMO amendment would not be. And so
And a GMO amendment would extend further into the future too, right? Or is
So
it
the GMO amendment that has been proposed by the council chair is relatively short and simple. It basically achieves the same thing that the Downs asked for most recently, which is that 289 number. Plus an exemption for another project that is known to be in the pipeline. And it's basically just a Band-Aid to get us through the next phase of the
without getting
Downs.
any public, without
With-
requiring any. public benefit?
Without entertaining the exemption request, applications, which those are the things that are tied to the public benefit. Again, that workshop is tonight. I was the fourth vote to put the council chair's request through to even have a conversation about it. I don't know how the workshop tonight will go, and I certainly don't know how second reading will
Mhm.
go. I am, because of my liaison roles, I'm very in tune with the public benefit piece that comes along with the exemption requests. I don't know that the rest of the council feels that maybe as thoroughly as I do, and so that will definitely be part of my discussion tonight. So
What specific kinds of public benefit were we hoping to get?
So the memo that was prepared and sent jointly by Randy outlines a variety of specifics when it comes to Conservation Commission. What they were looking for was trail connectivity.
And more
that's
land
right.
conservation.
More
Yeah,
land
yeah, I remember
conservation
that.
and putting
Yeah.
some parameters and some specifics
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, I
And
wasn't
we
here
were
for those
looking for
discussions, but yeah, I remember
enhanced
that.
energy
Yeah.
efficiency for
Yeah.
those.
So what's wrong with the
units.
trail connections? Why would
It's
anybody
not-
care?
Oh, no, it's not.
Make
I don't
it
think
part of
people
it.
are pushing back against. So I'll try and be more clear. I don't think people are pushing back against having the public benefit discussion. We were on a track that required a public benefit conversation. And the chair's proposal has now taken us on a track that does not require that
Yeah, well,
conversation.
it's not required.
Does
Does
Yeah.
either
Get
track
done.
still have a play though, or is it pretty much gonna go with the amendment?
I think that if the council chair's track fails, we're back to
Back to
having to
the-
deal with the exemption request.
So this is a workshop to determine whether that is the right approach
Yeah,
or not.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Alright, so-
it seems like there wasn't much opportunity for the council to discuss the proposed amendment. And so there was a lot of interest in having a workshop where
workshop.
they can have an open public discussion about that
Yes.
proposal, focusing just on that and not in the scheme of a much
Who
larger
wrote that
meeting.
amendment, the Downs or did the council?
Counselor
Council
Cochi
chair.
introduced it.
I wonder why
Mhm.
that happened.
Because we're bogged down by an exemption request process that none of us can
Yeah, and
figure
it's,
out.
it's not
because it's
sustainable.
Outlined by
Yeah,
the GMO
yeah,
and
it's just not sustainable.
exactly.
It's kind of scattershot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we needed something soon. We needed a GMO sooner rather than later, and so
Exactly.
that was the Band-Aid.
Exactly.
And so,
And so discussing the validity of this path, that's where we're at.
well, off the record, being on the record though, the longer you can prolong this, the more chances of standards already being changed and those kind of things would be a public benefit that they don't know because it's now law.
That point is not lost on me.
Do you
So-
need anything from us in preparation for that meeting? Or have we done enough? already?
What's your bourbon flavor?
What I was gonna say, what kind of question is that? I think in terms of preparedness, I'm good. Deb, thank you.
It's a workshop, so.
It's a workshop.
It's gonna share ideas and thoughts.
It's,
And I think that's.
We're glad we have
the
an advocate.
council is really divided.
Yeah, it's a
over
4-3
what-
vote.
over
It was a
what to
4-3
do.
vote.
And
so that
honestly,
doesn't mean-
like I said, I was the fourth to put it through for conversation, which has made me wildly unpopular in certain circles. People are suspect that we're trying to circumvent the process.
Mhm.
I'm a proponent of examining all possible paths. And so if this is one path that some people would like to take, I think we should talk about it. That doesn't mean that that's gonna be the.
That's
path that we
right,
take.
that's right. And I think, people that read into that a little deeper, April, will understand that the conversation needs to be had just to make sure that we're picking the right
Picking the right
pathway,
path.
that is the best for the town. So
So
while I'm disappointed to know that that conversation has delayed
again,
that, but it also has delayed the entire process, so that, that might also be a public benefit.
so that's where the council is. That workshop is tonight at 5:30.
Yeah.
And then regardless of the conversation at the workshop tonight, because we approved first reading and scheduled public hearing and second reading, that will be on the agenda for the October 1st meeting. Whether it immediately gets voted down or tabled or whatever remains to be seen, but that will be the next action of the council on this.
So actually the 5th, right?
Fifth,
So
sorry.
a week from
Sorry,
today
yes.
it's going for second reading,
Yes, the 5th, not the 1st.
the first meeting in October.
When's the public hearing? Doesn't that happen before the second reading?
So the way ordinance changes go, we can schedule the public hearing and.
do the second
for
reading at the same-
time.
And it doesn't
How
need
come we
to,
didn't do that with the ordinance, the solar?
we didn't have that choice. The council decided to do a public hearing,
Oh, how come we didn't do that?
but also it doesn't need to go before planning board.
The ordinance change?
Yeah,
No. I don't know.
yeah,
The vote may be
to move it.
to move it to planning. I would have to look at the wording. of
But how does
planning.
that,
Because I,
how
like,
does that go with land use? I'm trying
Yeah.
to see what aspect would the planning board have
Well-
oversight of?
I suppose,
Well,
like it's growth, it's
adding
building,
growth.
it's like they're
That's a
building
policy
stuff.
question,
Yeah,
not
it's
a,
true.
not
It's
a
a
land use
policy.
question.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
exactly. It's just it's changing the cited number of
Yeah.
exemptions.
Yeah, so
and
that
the
makes
year.
sense that it didn't go
So
to
cited
planning.
number of exemptions is X and to.
Once you put it to the voters.
2023, and those two numbers are being changed.
Well, and I think it seems like wouldn't long range planning committee, have they been a part of that
I wonder if
discussion?
that was part of the discussion. Yeah, because that might be the appropriate, let's run it by planning and see what's on their plate and see how that works into what their vision is, because they have a say. Most definitely, I would say that would be bad, but planning board isn't.
Yeah, no, but the long range planning committee, I think, is usually at least part of those discussions.
Yep, and then they get back to town council, and then if it's an ordinance change that affects the land use, then it comes to planning board.
Mhm.
But yeah, bring that up.
I don't think that, I'm speaking out of turn, and I hope that this is an accurate statement. This is an ordinance change that's going to first read, that went through first reading at the council without having been at ordinance also. This didn't go through a council committee. This was, and
But it was-
any counselor, chair or not, is
Mhm.
welcome to bring forward and sponsor something for first reading. It doesn't necessarily have to have gone through committee. But I think that that's a nuanced piece of this too.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that it wasn't at least referred to committee.
This is
Yeah, just as a
straightforward.
check the box off kind of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. It almost seems like it's being rammed through
The
instead of,
timing of this is changed.
yeah, well, good luck.
Be interesting.
I
to
mean that
watch
sincerely, but
workshop.
also I think I know what part of what you're going through. Can't say I speak for it all. Good luck.
All right. So shall we move on to solar?
Yeah.
It really is just an update at this point. So it went through public hearing at the planning board. It was not great at planning board. We went through public hearing last week. Yeah, last week before town council. And I feel like that was a pretty good, a good process.
I still haven't watched the video from the planning board. What were the major concerns? Can you-
It was the fact that they were cutting, that we specifically were putting in
That you can cut down
language that
trees.
lets you cut down trees.
Um,
Not that there's already language and rights that you can do it now. And it just, I blame myself. I didn't forcefully say that, this is really restricting clear cutting. And they totally listened to the public comments, I guess there were more than one, and didn't look at it through the lens of being an ordinance and how it relates to all the other ordinances that we have.
And I feel like the public comments weren't entirely accurate.
No, they weren't.
So,
I scolded my colleagues the next, off the record. I said, you guys got to do your homework when you talk about this kind of
it
stuff.
seemed like they hadn't read through the materials that were provided to them and were relying on what was being said in the public hearing, as opposed to looking at the issue and what was being proposed and
Cutting
things
down
like that.
tree, it totally shut down people. Just totally turned their ears off. And
Well, and we need to get back. That was what we were hoping to talk with Conservation Commission about and got derailed by this
Right.
GMO request.
right.
Was looking more deeply into long-term land management.
Yeah.
By private owners.
I feel the town council has the education now to make a decision. And I feel good about that because they heard and they, just looking at body language, kind of indicated to me that they get it. And that this is a responsible, we're actually hurting landowners in Scarborough the way the ordinance is written right now. And so I got up and I tried to make that this is a balance now. And that allows landowners do what they want, but also prevents something that they could do anyway.
Right.
So, I don't know, April, you might have a sense of where the council is going with that.
I never.
Always my
I
answer
will,
too.
I will never again think that I have a sense of where council's gonna go on something. But having sat through, we've now done public hearing, right? And so now we just have second reading left to do.
Mhm.
I thought the public hearing went well. I thought that, public comment was balanced in the sense that if some public commenters were saying things that were not entirely accurate, we had experts in the room who were able to make some additional comments. And I felt like the council understood what was in front of us and the ramifications of specifically looking at the ordinance as a whole and what it does for landowners as opposed to just this.
It was unanimous to move it to second reading, so that kind of, and it was, well, no, it was not.
No, it wasn't.
Ken,
Ken was having an evening.
yeah, he had an evening that night. That was, he's the no council and the rest are the yes council. But nevertheless, the ones that I feel like we needed to influence the most seem to be
I think the
there.
council's ready to feels prepared and
Yeah,
informed to vote,
I do wish
which
that
is important.
that
at
it
this
was
point.
public hearing and vote last
Yeah.
meeting because
I don't know
it's
why
kind
it
of
was
no rhyme or
separated.
reason. Yeah.
I don't
or-
know.
It's almost like putting it on a consent agenda, like what planning board does. We just want to hear one thing and, okay, fine, go. Or we heard that one thing, but we want to make the applicant come back and actually prove with a piece of paper,
Yeah.
like a DEP permit.
So I believe it should be on the October 5th agenda as well.
Yep.
So we'll see how that one goes. And then I did share out there's some guidance that was put out by Maine Farmland Trust around solar. Because they did notice that we were modifying, while the modifications that are proposed to that ordinance, we've really focused on tree cutting. It's also related to agricultural lands and adjusting how solar can be installed on agricultural lands. So right now you can't put it on working lands. And in the new draft or proposed language, we're saying you can, but you cannot remove any of the topsoil so that upon decommissioning, there's still quality soil there. it could go back into
Mhm.
active farming.
Right.
And so Maine Farmland Trust reached out to Counselor Clucci saying, I noticed that you're considering updating your language. Please look at this guidance. So I took a look at it. I reached out to them, kind of explained why we proposed the change, because we're basically saying by prohibiting solar development on farmland, we're saying, but you can put in roads and buildings and that's fine. So wanted to make sure that we're not inadvertently prioritizing permanent development over
Well, and
solar development.
there were conversations too, I don't want to get lost, about dual use agricultural and.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And pollination and all
Right,
that kind
and
of
I
stuff.
did say, you know, they're required to plant wildflower meadow around it to increase pollinator habitat and things like that. I have a meeting scheduled with them on Friday just to kind of talk through things, but I'm hoping that that's not going to derail this process also, because it does look like what's proposed is recommended, some of the recommended measures within their guidance.
Okay, I mean, there's a Colorado farmer that's working on row cropping with solar, and there's all the grazing with solar
Right.
stuff that we don't want to inadvertently
Right.
prohibit.
Yeah, and as long as grazing is allowed within the zoning where the solar is going in the RF districts,
It almost has
it
to.
would be, then you can do like grazing around your solar arrays also.
Right, because if someone were to put solar in a field that they're using for grazing.
Right,
That,
That's not
Could
a
be
change of
lovely
use for that
to-
land.
Right.
You know,
but if our ordinance prohibits solar on active agricultural land, which that would be, then that is prohibited. So
Yeah.
that's a piece of the, like, that's where I was coming from when we were talking about the agricultural land.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that part doesn't get lost.
Right.
Thanks.
well, that's the value of having a sustainability coordinator on staff.
yeah,
Yeah.
Town council can just say, can you investigate this and get back to me on that? And there's a definite value in that. So thanks, Jamie.
sure. So, yeah, and also in that guidance though was something that I thought might be good as we start conversations with Conservation Commission about the habitat alteration ordinance that we had talked about. So not just talking about tree cutting, but any kind of important habitats that development may be impacting. There were kind of like mitigation fees and things like that they would have to. One example, I think it was in Topsom. If they did allow solar to be developed on like prime agricultural land, they would have to pay essentially a mitigation fee, and that fee went into a fund to go towards land conservation within the town. So something to think about as we start talking about the habitat alteration ordinance that we had kind of brought up as the tree cutting.
You get
discussion.
into the RF district and get deep down inside. There's not three-phase service there. So some of these lands, I mean, it's just not feasible for a developer of solar generator to go and have to build out that infrastructure.
Right.
So,
And
you know.
CMP, I don't think has any plans to extend three-phase in those areas.
No, because, you know, there'll be so much fight for that because that just goes on the backs of the ratepayers.
Yep.
And,
So,
Okay, well, thanks for keeping on top of that.
yeah. And then EV charging ordinance, also an update. So it went before the ordinance committee, and thanks to Deb and David joined us as well at that meeting. And I do appreciate you chiming in for certain questions that the ordinance committee had. So I think it went about as I expected it to go. They want to have more input from our new planning director who just started in late August. So she and I had sat down and talked about it. And she is on board with the ordinance and everything. She did have some good questions and things for me to think about. So areas where I need to add a little bit of clarity. For example, if a single family home wants to pay the in lieu fee instead of being EV ready, that shouldn't go before planning board. It should go through our zoning.
codes and,
adminis-
yeah.
So adding that language in.
Yeah, that
and
makes
things like
sense.
that, like
Yeah.
really minor
As long as
things.
we keep that fee high enough that they'll just.
Exactly.
buy wire instead.
Yes, because right now the fee is $3,000 and it would probably cost them a couple hundred to put the,
Keep it like that.
yes, yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
if somebody really wants to object to the point that they refuse to have the wire, then knock themselves out.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it's the same thing with the smart meter.
Right.
If you refuse to have the smart meter put in, you have to pay.
So, so they kicked it back to the planning department. The other issue that came up was basically restaurants with limited parking, requiring them to put in chargers. And I tried to make the point, and Deb tried to make the point, we're not requiring that they put in chargers. We're requiring that they put in the conduit. So at some point in the future, when the market dictates that they should have an EV charger, they're not ripping up their parking lot in order to do that.
Right.
And I don't know that point was heard, even though it was said a couple times.
Mhm.
So,
Because there were still objections about exactly that issue at the end, and that's one of the things that he wanted you to go back to
Right.
the planner with.
yeah,
And so maybe that can come in the form of a memo from the
Ex-
planner.
and that is the plan. So, Autumn they specifically wanted her to look at our parking standards and our existing zoning to make sure that this aligns well.
There's a balance. Yeah.
And she's like, it doesn't affect anything. She's like, it fits in with the zoning. She did want, like, the whole just discussion about restaurants prompted her to just go through and look at what the parking standards are for restaurants. And that one's a little bit more complex because it has to do with like number of tables and number of seats.
Right.
It's like a little more ambiguous than like a hotel where you have X number of rooms and you can expect like 1 car per room and things
Right.
like that. So, she looked at what Scarborough standards are, what neighboring community standards are. We're right in the middle of like everyone. So it seems like it makes sense.
The only place we might want to go back and look again, I'm going to bring this from the stakeholder meeting, was multifamily dwellings, where we did want to require a couple of chargers. That. And
I don't think
and
we want to
something-
give up that.
No, I don't want to give that up, but we might need to require, I don't know what, that those couple of required spots with chargers are extra spots.
So, and there was some discussion about that during the stakeholder process.
Yeah.
The thought is mixed because that just means more impervious
Pervious
surface.
surface.
So,
We're talking 2 parking spaces.
Yeah, but
And
you're adding cost and you're adding impervious surface.
Right,
which
But to do
impacts
that for-
stormwater and all of that.
but if the building goes up and at that time, there's nobody in the building that has an EV and there's these 2 spots that are reserved for EVs, I think that could be a real issue.
Mhm.
And so to me, it feels like 2 parking spots of additional impervious surface is worth it to get those first couple of chargers in
Mhm.
place.
Stay tuned though, Deb, with the infrastructure bill and the tax credits that are coming out for EV owners. It's wicked attractive.
I know.
And so
I know,
you
and I
could
think-
build that in tomorrow.
I think that as soon as that spot is there, somebody in the building is gonna be like, oh, I can have an EV when I live here and it'll all be fine. It's that transitional spot that is. of
Yeah,
concern.
but that's preparing for the future, in my opinion, and it would,
My point is that I would compromise on
I wouldn't compromise on that.
giving them a couple extra parking spots, not on not putting them in, but.
So, the way that Jean Marie basically wanted this to move forward and said, here are concerns, address them before first reading at council. But Don and Nick both said, no, we want this to come back before us again. Don initially said he wanted more stakeholder involvement, and I was like, we already did a whole meeting with them. The
This
recording,
was a second reading.
No, this was that.
well, this was at ordinance committee. And it
Oh,
was,
at the committee.
yeah, and we've already done a council workshop. We did a stakeholder meeting. We adjusted the numbers down based on the feedback from the stakeholders. The information like that, the recording of the stakeholder meeting is available to them if they want to go back and watch it. Nick's thing about wanting to understand how this fits in with our zoning, fine. April's already gone through and done that. And so she, I believe she is planning on coming to the ordinance committee meeting. I'll talk to her about pulling together a memo, just basically outlining
Yeah.
what she looked at and
Like a
what,
one-page memo.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about a lot, but like a one-page memo.
yeah.
That the top line is there's no requirement for installing any chargers. at
Right, at restaurants.
Restaurants.
Yeah, and so the biggest impacts are going to be for large retail sales and service and health clubs, because those are the places where we're anticipating people will go for a somewhat extended period of
Long enough to
time.
bother.
Right. And so they're gonna have to have 25% of their parking EV ready, or EV capable. So just put conduit under 25% of your parking of that. And then they're gonna need I think 5% that have chargers installed. And so of that 25%, 5% of them will have chargers installed, 10% will have capacity to quickly expand if they need more chargers. It's not a huge lift.
792 parking spots are being created with
At
6
Costco.
chargers, with 6 spaces for charging.
This is the Costco, 6.
But you'll be able to see them, no problem. You'll see right where they are
Well, and
because they're twice the limit on lighting. And I was totally told by the guy, he's not gonna decrease to anything less than 3-foot candles. And it's for safety. But yet it took us so much to get a sidewalk from one end of the parking lot to the front of the store so people could safely walk through the parking lot. It took.
Rick, if you see them, you don't need a sidewalk.
Everyone's glowing.
It's super
But
dangerous to play
it's
an EV.
not about safety. It's
I get a lot
about
of
being a
extra lights to
beacon
do
there. It's all about marketing.
Okay.
I want to show off my building. I want people to see Costco.
They will.
And they will. And I
can
came
see it from
so
here.
close to voting no on that. It would have still passed
Yeah.
because I would have been the only one.
Would've been
But
perfect.
for that person to say he will not go below 3, I said, I can't accept that. The only thing I got out of it was that the planning department will work with the applicant in lowering the light levels. But to whatever, 2.9. It should be 1.5 max.
So that needs to be another ordinance update.
Well, we do probably need to figure out something. Because that just irked me to have that corporate attitude come into our town and push through so that they can sit there as a beacon. And I kept saying, you're gonna come in and it's gonna look like there's a football game going on. Because they also got the waiver approved for the higher light poles.
It's a stadium.
Ugh.
Costco
So
stadium.
I don't know. Sometimes I wonder the planning board, some of the planning board members, they don't do the homework. I can honestly admit, I don't do homework on traffic. I just don't deal with the traffic aspect of, but we have somebody on that does
Mhm.
and does a wonderful job. I don't feel like I have to spend time with that. I'm spending time on the built environment.
And they don't have to because you're doing it.
Well, yeah, but they need to back me up.
Or at least defer to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's silliness.
So thanks for fighting on it.
So looks like with EV charging, we'll be back before the ordinance committee on October 20th.
Do you need anything else from us or is it just Amber?
I think Autumn and I can,
Autumn,
you're
sorry.
fine.
But we have
I
Ken
think
on
you
there
said
and we
April
have
earlier.
Dawn.
Did I? Well, April is kind of a season.
Well, it's
One
been
of those-
Autumn and Amber.
It's
and-
one of those A names.
Yeah.
I know it's an A name. Sorry.
We
Tell
have
me
Jean
again when I
Marie.
put down
No,
Doug.
Jean Marie,
Jean Marie.
Don Hamel, Nick McGee are the three.
Oh, Nick is
Yeah.
now on, and that's a good move to put Nick on.
Yeah, because he
ordinance.
served on the planning board.
Yeah, yeah. So I just need to have coffee with him.
I was gonna ask if there was anybody that could have a.
Yeah.
Excellent. Do that, please.
Yeah, and Jean Marie is like, I was the liaison to sustainability committee. I know how long they've been working on this. Just move it forward. Thank you, Jean Marie. So, but like I said, I fully expected to be back before them.
Okay.
Again, I didn't expect any action to be taken because literally in the agenda, it said update. So like they're
Well,
not,
if we can slow the GMO process down enough to
Just
get this
drag
through,
it
then I feel like we've actually accomplished something, Gavin.
That's actually kind of cool.
We got involved and we're able to affect an ordinance. That's been our dream, hasn't it?
Oh my God, I cannot tell you the number of times.
It's just,
I've said, can we have an ordinance? And everyone said, no, we have to do it in these special deals. And I said, can we do it in a special deal? And they're like, no.
No,
because
it's
it has
not
to
in
be
the
an
ordinance. Yeah. We figured it
So if
out
I get a
now.
The
special
process
deal and an
works.
ordinance,
it just,
Can we
It's
do
just
it
a
then?
long process,
Yeah.
but
okay,
we're getting there.
but I feel good about it.
just been a decade, that's all.
I know, Dan. We still haven't got any money coming into our green fund.
I know that.
Yeah.
Well, let's write an ordinance. I can't tell you how much I love writing ordinances.
Thanks, Jamie.
It's not in the
I can't
ordinance,
wait
it's
to
already in
review that
our,
ordinance.
it's in our sustainability plan that was approved by the council.
We just gotta figure it out.
Keep us going.
Carry on.
That's it, except for updates. So we already kind of had a town council update. I don't know if there's anything more.
I don't know if it's of interest to you guys, but I'm doing a site walk with Angela this morning, a couple other town officials and the engineers who are planning the Avenue 2 access to High
Oh,
Point
yeah.
Beach. I'm like brand new to even hearing about the project, so I expressed interest in going and doing the site walk to see what they have planned.
Yeah, what is this?
So the developer bought the land that was adjacent to what people use as the walking path that goes from, I don't know what the names of the roads are.
Yeah, what is that road?
Basically
What is
from,
it, Pine Point?
yes.
It's
at
Pine Point. It's one of the trail access
Yeah.
points down to the beach. So not through Herd Park, but off of one of the side roads.
Right.
There are several kind of openings and walking trails to access the beach without going through Herd Park.
Right, and so it has a long history because essentially it's what's known as a paper road, because it's been used as public land and public access to the beach, but technically it's on private property. And so when the property changed hands, there was a lot of deed work that was done to ensure that the property would still give the public access to the beach. And so, and there's all kinds of interesting dune construction that's happening and making sure that that stays preserved as a place that we can.
So the
still
path
access.
that would only be really usable by residents in
It's-
the area, not to people, because there's no parking.
Well, if people are parked at a rental property, they would use that as their pedestrian.
Yeah,
access.
or-
But
and there is-
residents meaning also people. in
Sure.
rentals, yeah.
There is some on-street parking not too far from there, so people could park on the street and walk to that access point. Angela and I did go take a look at it on Monday because they've kind of flagged out the area where basically the town has a 10-foot right of way. So it's 5 feet on one property and 5 feet on another property. And so they've kind of staked out the property line and where the path should be. And the path is definitely currently on more on one property than the other and not centered between the two of them. So they're talking about where they want to move the path so that it is more within that 10-foot right of way and not just on one landowner's property and things like that. Trying to minimize the impact to the dune system because it does go through the frontal dune. There are also invasives out there that should be removed if possible, if they're already removing some vegetation. There's a lot of stakeholder interest because some of the residents in Pine Point don't want any of the vegetation to go away, whether it's invasive or not. The landowners obviously want some of the vegetation gone because they want to actually move the path. The Conservation Commission is interested and it's a whole thing. So, there's a
So I'm doing
sidewalk this
that at
morning.
10. Yeah.
I'm willing to stay out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yep. So that's, and Angela, the town engineer, is going and she's like, I want to keep you out of it, Jamie, but I need your input. So we went down and
So
took a
that's
look
where
at
you
it.
two were headed on Monday?
Yeah. Yes.
I find site walks are helpful. so,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
I'm interested to just,
I changed my mind on one of the things at planning board because we did a site walk.
because you went, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm interested. to
So-
see what-
And then you just saying that you had a site walk reminded me, I did send out to all of you, GP Cog is doing an electric bus demonstration this morning at Willie Park in Scarborough. So if anyone's
That's
interested,
11?
it's at 10 11, yes. I was thinking
Okay.
10:30.
And isn't there Drive Main something going on downtown this weekend?
Yeah, there could be an EV event.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, so I guess this electric bus is going, I don't know if it's another one for Mount Desert, but it's like somewhere up on the coast, they got another electric bus. So the company is going to do a demo and stuff, and you get to
Stay
ride
tuned, that
the bus.
infrastructure bill is gonna have that too.
And
Yeah.
and they're staging this whole thing at Willie.
Yeah, so they came to us and asked if they could use one of our municipal lots, and our town hall lot and stuff is just not big enough. So I checked in with community services and they're like, let's go to
That
Willie
makes
would be
sense.
good. So yeah, everything's at Willie Park at 11, if 11 to 1. And there will be I'm planning on going, they're gonna do you can ride the bus and see what it's like and all of that. I haven't been on a school bus in ages since my kids had step up day to kindergarten. So I'm like, all right, let's go on the bus. So yeah, and it'll be interesting. They were reaching out to school departments and transportation departments and things like that. So they're anticipating 30 or so people. So hopefully it'll be a good turnout. Yeah, pretty cool that.
I
gonna be
hope,
riding through
I hope when I
Scarborough.
retire, because I've already been hired by Scarborough to become a bus driver.
Yes.
I hope my first bus I get to drive is an electric
Electric
one.
bus.
That would be
Big
awesome.
dream. Big dreams.
Yeah.
See if Sarah can make that happen for
Can
me.
we add to our future agendas, or when we do that?
I think there's a spot to talk about next month's.
Yeah,
agenda.
I don't have much of an update from Conservation Commission. They're focusing right now on trail networks and trail connectivity, which does relate to this group because the more we can get people out of their cars and on foot and bikes, definitely reduces emissions. So we'll see where that goes. And then I don't know if there's another planning board update that. you want to
No,
share.
we did a workshop with town council with the Mercedes-Benz, but that's nothing. That was just because our ordinance makes them do that. But the Maine National Air Guard and Army Guard came before the council and planning board for contract zone. They certainly demonstrated the public.
I was gonna ask what's their public benefit.
Talk about public benefit. They know the talk and the walk. It's not a very big project, and mostly in Scarborough, it affects parking, which we didn't really want, but Saco, it's right on the freaking line, so it's one of those things, but having them attached to Scarborough isn't a bad thing at all. The public benefit is just incredible. So I thought that's worth getting the buzz around, because you'll like what you see.
Nice. And I'm sorry, I think I cut you off. Was
Oh,
there
no.
any? Okay.
Oh, and Allagash is moving. So
Allagash is
there's
coming.
been a
to
lot of
Scarborough,
PR,
yes.
nothing before planning yet, but there's Allagash potentially moving into the Downs.
Yeah, they bought a 7-acre parcel for a tasting room. So you got it, and they have a very big outdoor ethic. So you've got to think that they're going to do some sort of trail connectivity and stuff.
You would think.
Because they're leaving production in Portland and this will
Well, the
just be
production- Yeah, right. In Evergreen Drive in Portland, right.
Yeah.
Now, there's also talk of Allagash, or is that the one?
that's the one that's coming.
Mass
Mass Landing.
Landing
They did just announce that they have
to
a
do a
spot.
restaurant.
Okay, because they just announced that they have a spot in South Portland. So I don't.
And
know.
Sea Dog has expressed an interest in Famous Days.
Yeah,
I
that was
wondered if that
announced.
was just a rumor.
That won't come before planning board because that'll just come from coach.
Yeah, they started painting that, it had the famous Dave's facade
Yeah.
for all this time, and they finally took down the sign. And, so there's some kind of activity going on there, so maybe it's
Didn't go
moving along.
unnoticed. Residents were very
Well,
yeah.
curious.
and
Yeah,
the
right.
And that breaks my heart. I've been a
Amazing.
mug club holder since the day it switched from expectations to Sea Dog on. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hold one of the original mugs. That has to be 10 years ago.
Wow. Well, Sedco's Business Update Scarborough Facebook page announced that Sea Dog was moving into that spot.
Oh,
So,
so confirmed.
yeah.
It is.
And I'm slated to attend the Sedco annual meeting. So that'd be nice. They invited all the planning board,
Nice.
so. You better RSVP. It's free.
Yeah,
you
but I don't
and
think
me.
I responded. Okay.
Better get your name in so you get a drink ticket.
What is it?
All right, so next meeting agenda, Deb, what item?
Well, no, I don't know when we need to get to it, but Chuck's email about electrified.
Oh, electrified,
Freeport.
yeah.
But I wanted to make sure we learned more also about South Portland's Electrify Everything initiative, just to get a handle of what these things are. and see
Yeah.
if there's a space for
Yeah,
us
I
to-
know what South Portland is their electrify everything is for homeowners. They have like $50,000 to tap onto existing rebates
Mhm.
for folks to go electric. That's pretty simple.
Right, right.
So there's nothing fancy about that one. But also Portland has
Portland has
electrify everything.
And that helped them bring in, establish an EV charging network. They partnered with ChargePoint to
Yep.
get EV chargers and level 2 and 3 chargers at a number of public parking lots. And it's costing them nothing because ChargePoint's going to own and maintain.
Right.
And
And
collect the
they're all
fees.
networked.
Yeah, and collect the fees for that.
Well, I
That's
just
what I
want to make
mean. I don't know
sure.
why these developers don't do a little research on that stuff.
Right.
Oh,
So I would just like to make sure that we get a full update on what those things are.
Yep.
And start a process of seeing whether there's an initiative we should be undertaking.
Yeah, so sure, absolutely. I'll look into,
tied to our comprehensive plan, electrify Scarborough.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
Since we
see,
don't
it's
have
never
to-
gonna be dead, never gonna be
Never
dead
will.
around here.
nope, it never will.
okay,
Okay, anything else?
that's all I want to make sure it's on the list.
Tom, you all set? Hearing no and not a yes, neither. Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
let's go.